Lassen Peak is one of the largest plug dome volcanoes on Earth. In 1915, it tore itself apart, sending walls of superheated mud through valleys and punching ash thousands of feet into the sky. But the eruption is only the beginning. A frontier guide broke through the ground here and plunged into boiling acid. Visitors report unexplained voices echoing across empty thermal basins, and 4 indigenous nations carried knowledge of this peak long before any map ever recorded it. Lassen is where mysteries, legends, and ghost stories meet volcanic ground, and it all starts with how this mountain was made. Lassen Peak stands today at an elevation of 10,457 feet, dominating the Northern California skyline as one of the largest plug dome volcanoes on Earth. To understand its volatile nature, one must look at how this massive peak constructed itself from the inside out. About 27,000 years ago, a colossal volume of dacite lava began pushing toward the surface. Unlike the runny lava flows that build gentle slopes, dacite is rich in silica. This high silica content makes the molten rock incredibly thick, sticky, and highly resistant to movement. Instead of streaming down the mountainside in smooth rivers, the viscous lava oozed upward, cooling rapidly as it met the air. It piled up directly over its own vent, expanding outward and upward, eventually constructing a massive dome that rises 2,000 feet above its surrounding volcanic base. This slow squeezing created a towering monument of solid stone. But this massive cap of dacite also acted as a giant plug. It sealed the volcanic throat, trapping gases and superheated fluids deep underground. Because the thick, cooled lava could not easily escape, immense pressure began to build behind this heavy stone cork. This structural architecture is exactly what makes plug dome volcanoes so dangerous. They do not gently relieve pressure, but instead hold it back until the mountain can no longer contain the force. Across the park today, these stark, jagged rock formations stand in silent contrast to the green forests below. The towering summit looks completely solid, cold, and quiet. Yet beneath this heavy, ancient dacite shell lies a complex network of pathways. Deep fissures and conduits remain open to the Earth's interior, quietly channeling heat, rising fluids, and pressure from the magma chamber far below, waiting for the moment the plug at last gives way. On May 30th, 1914, the mountain finally broke its silence. Cold water from the melting winter snowpack had seeped far into the subterranean fractures, coming into direct contact with the superheated rock below. The result was a sudden phreatic explosion, a violent steam-driven blast triggered when trapped groundwater is rapidly heated and pressurized. This force ripped through the peak, carving out a brand new summit crater where solid stone had stood moments before. Park records indicate this first blowout was a clear warning that the volcano's plumbing was changing. The mountain had entered a period of steady escalation. Over the next 2 years, the peak erupted repeatedly. While historical sources vary on the exact tally, observers documented well over 150 distinct explosions during this era of unrest, with each blast fracturing the summit dome and scattering dark ash across the snowfields. This continuous, dramatic activity captured the attention of the nation. The volcanic crisis was still actively unfolding when Congress stepped in. On August 9, 1916, while the peak was still steaming and shaking, the federal government officially established Lassen Volcanic National Park, setting aside a living geological laboratory in the absolute middle of its modern eruptive cycle. By mid-May 1915, a new dacite lava dome was growing rapidly inside Lassen's summit crater, creating an unstable mass of superheated volcanic rock. On the evening of May 19th, this fragile dome collapsed under immense internal pressure. The sudden failure released a torrent of hot rock and ash onto the thick winter snowpack. Instantly, the snow melted, mixing with the debris to form a lahar, a highly destructive, fast-moving volcanic mudflow with the consistency of wet concrete. This torrent raced 15 miles down the Lost Creek drainage system, sweeping away trees, burying homesteads, and carrying massive boulders far into the valley below. Local photographer Benjamin Franklin Loomis was camped close to the action, braving the falling ash to track the mountain's shifts through his camera. Using heavy glass plate negatives, Loomis captured the immediate aftermath of the mudflow and the steaming summit, preserving a precise visual record of the mountain's rapid collapse. One giant volcanic boulder carried by the mud flow, later named the Loomis Hot Rock, remained so hot it could not be touched for days, demonstrating the extreme thermal energy of the collapse. But the volcano was not finished. On the afternoon of May 22, 1915, Lassen Peak erupted in a massive volcanic explosion. A powerful blast shattered the remaining dome, sending a vertical column of ash and gas 30,000 feet into the atmosphere, blackening the sky for miles. Ash drifted hundreds of miles eastward, raining down on towns as far away as Nevada, turning day into night for thousands of residents. Moments after the initial blast, a pyroclastic flow swept down the northeast flank. Unlike the mud flow, which was driven by liquid water, a pyroclastic flow is a superheated, dense avalanche of gas, ash, and rock fragments traveling at hurricane speeds. This searing current overran the path of the earlier mud flow, instantly incinerating any remaining vegetation and stripping the soil down to bedrock. The combination of these two distinct phenomena, the cold, wet lahar of May 19th and the dry, fiery, pyroclastic flow of May 22nd, permanently reshaped the mountainside. It left behind a barren, boulder-strewn wasteland known today as the devastated area. The stark terrain remains a giant open-air laboratory, offering physical evidence of the raw volcanic forces that can rewrite a valley in a matter of days. Lassen Peak's eruptive cycle dragged on into 1917, gradually shifting into a quieter, steam-dominated phase. A strong steam explosion in May of that final year blasted open a new northern crater on the summit, capping off the active period. For residents living near the peak, these years were experienced through a chaotic blur of pitch-black skies, sulfurous steam, and rumbling ground. But for geologists today, the chaos is recorded with precision in the earth. Layers of coarse dacite blocks, fine ash, and mudflow sediment act as a physical archive, preserving the exact order of the mountain's transformation. This physical record also confirms a surprising historical truth. Despite the sheer violence of the flows that swept the valleys, official records indicate there were no confirmed deaths during the entire multi-year eruption. A single archival report details a man knocked unconscious by a falling stone, but he survived, leaving the story of Lassen's modern awakening written entirely in stone. Rain and winter snow melt on the high peaks of Lassen, but they do not simply run off into mountain streams. The water sinks. It seeps deep into the fractured volcanic rock, descending miles into the earth, where it encounters a massive reservoir of heat left behind by ancient magma. This water does not collect in a single massive underground pool. Instead, it circulates through a vast interconnected labyrinth of deep volcanic fractures. Under immense pressure, the water is superheated to a parent temperature of roughly 240 degrees Celsius. It becomes highly pressurized and chemically altered, dissolving silica and other minerals from the surrounding rock as it begins its violent journey back to the surface. When these fluids finally escape, they manifest in wildly different ways across the park's terrain, leaving measured surface temperatures ranging from 115 to 239 degrees Celsius. In some areas, the rising steam and gases mix with shallow groundwater to create highly acidic pools with a pH between 0 and 3, an environment as corrosive as battery acid. Sulfur deposits paint the ground in vivid yellow and orange crusts, while boiling pools, bubbling mud pots, and roaring steam vents or fumaroles act as chimney pipes for the subterranean furnace. Each geothermal basin plays a distinct role in this sprawling system. At sulfur works, the ground is literally altered and dissolved from within, exposing boiling mud pots and sulfurous vents right alongside the park roads. Further into the wilderness, Boiling Springs Lake acts as a massive thermal sink, its entire basin heated and chemically warped by fluids rising directly from below. In the rugged isolation of Devil's Kitchen, a dense hidden cluster of fumaroles and bubbling springs fills a steep canyon with constant noise and thick, sulfurous steam. Together, this hydrothermal network releases an estimated 140 megawatts of heat energy into the atmosphere. To keep watch on this restless giant, the California Volcano Observatory maintains a surveillance network. Seismic stations listen for the low-frequency vibrations of shifting fluids, while gas sensors, temperature probes, and ground deformation instruments track the mountain's subtle movements. Yet these instruments are tools of observation, not absolute guarantees of prediction. The hydrothermal plumbing remains highly unpredictable, with gas concentrations and sudden thermal disturbances shifting rapidly and without warning. Walking through these active basins, the heavy, choking scent of rotten eggs hangs thick in the air. The physical sounds of hissing steam and plopping mud pots echo off the canyon walls. The ground beneath a traveler's feet is often surprisingly hot to the touch and structurally unstable, serving as a constant reminder that the solid earth is little more than a fragile, crumbling ceiling over a boiling abyss. In the mid-1860s, a frontier guide and explorer named Kendall Van Hook Bumpass began leading visitors into this steam-filled terrain. He claimed a mining interest in the area, but the ground he walked on was far from stable. High-temperature geothermal basins often form a deceptive mineral crust over their boiling cores. To the untrained eye, this hardened clay and silica looks like solid earth, but it is actually a brittle, paper-thin ceiling concealing superheated mud and water. On September 10, 1865, Bumpass was guiding a small party through the steaming flats. As he turned to warn his group about the unstable surface, his foot broke through the fragile crust. His leg plunged directly into a scalding pool of acidic mud, heated to roughly 240 degrees Fahrenheit. His companions pulled him from the boiling mire and dragged him to a nearby snowbank, packing the cold snow around his severely burned flesh. The damage was catastrophic. The leg could not be saved, and doctors eventually amputated the limb. When local newspapers reported on the accident, Bumpass reportedly remarked that he had been in hell, giving rise to the basin's enduring name, Bumpass Hell. While the name sounds like a supernatural legend, it stands as a historical record of a real human tragedy. Long after Lassen's ancient eruptions subsided, these hydrothermal hazards remain active and unpredictable, proving that the frontier danger of 1865 is still very real today. Long before modern explorers and miners set foot on these volcanic slopes, a rich human history flourished across the region. Archaeological evidence traces active settlement here back at least 7,500 years, proving that this volatile terrain was never an empty wilderness. 4 distinct native nations, the Atsugewi, Yana, Mountain Maidu, and Akomawi, held strong ties to this land. Rather than living in fear of the thermal vents, these communities understood the Earth's cycles. They moved seasonally, fishing Hat Creek, harvesting acorns along the southern slopes, and traveling up to the high-elevation meadows and forests during the warm summer months. To these peoples, the towering peak was known as Kom Yamani, a sacred landmark of power and healing. Today, their descendant communities remain the living cultural authorities of this area. For these modern stewards, the volcano represents an active link to their heritage, carrying a historical memory that predates pioneer trails by millennia and anchors the true story of Lassen in the enduring legacy of its first peoples. Ranger logs and historical travel diaries from the early 20th century record persistent, unsettling experiences within the steaming thermal basins. Local stories claim that travelers walking through the dense thermal fog hear faint, human-like voices speaking in the wind, accompanied by rhythmic, low-thumping sounds beneath the earth. Others have reported seeing fleeting gray figures that seem to glide through the sulfurous plumes before vanishing entirely. Geologists explain that these eerie events are the physical results of an active hydrothermal system. When superheated steam escapes through narrow volcanic vents, the rushing gas acts like a giant flute, producing high-pitched whistles and hollow tones that carry across the quiet valleys. Sudden pressure changes, bubbling mud pots, and the collapse of fragile mineral crusts generate low-frequency hollow thumps that many mistake for footsteps. The visual apparitions are similarly grounded in the park's volatile atmosphere. Dense, rising steam plumes alter the air density, refracting low mountain light and creating optical illusions. In the dim twilight, this warped light combined with the human brain's natural tendency to find familiar shapes in random patterns, a psychological reaction known as pareidolia, transforms drifting vapor into human silhouettes. In the high-altitude isolation of the park, rapidly changing mountain weather combines with the environment to intensify these sensations. The heavy, choking scent of sulfur, combined with low light and dense mist, can trigger mild disorientation. A 1930 ranger report from the Sulphur Works area documents a visitor fleeing the basin after witnessing a shadow figure rise from a boiling mud pot. While science explains the shadow as steam refracting off the dark canyon walls, the cold fear felt by the observer remains entirely real. This boundary between physical explanation and emotional reaction is where the legends of the active vents endure, keeping alive the stories of those who felt watched in the silent mist. Today, Lassen remains a realm of shifting borders not just between tectonic plates, but between what we can measure and what we feel. As the Earth continues to hiss and breathe, the mysteries of this wilderness refuse to stay buried. When you walk these steaming trails, ask yourself what is truly whispering in the mist. What do you believe is down there? Share your thoughts in the comments.